Maryanne, David, Peniel, and Josh had been inseparable since childhood. Growing up in a small village, they had always found ways to entertain themselves, whether it was exploring the surrounding woods, playing pranks on each other, or simply hanging out at the local market. Maryanne's mother had always been wary of her daughter's close relationship with the boys. "You're a girl, Maryanne," she would say. "You should be focusing on your studies and helping me with household chores, not gallivanting around with those boys." But Maryanne didn't care. She loved her friends and the adventures they shared. And besides, her mother's constant nagging only seemed to push her closer to David, Peniel, and Josh. As they grew older, their adventures became more ambitious. They began to explore the surrounding countryside, discovering hidden streams, abandoned ruins, and secret meadows. One day, while wandering through the woods, they stumbled upon a glint of light coming from a nearby thicket. As they approached, they saw that it was a diamond, half buried in the earth. "Wow, look at that!" Josh exclaimed, his eyes wide with wonder. "We should take it to the village jeweler," Peniel suggested. "We could get a fortune for it." But David was hesitant. "I don't know, guys. Something doesn't feel right. We shouldn't be messing with something that doesn't belong to us." Maryanne rolled her eyes. "Come on, David. Don't be such a chicken. We'll be fine." In the end, they decided to take the diamond to the village jeweler. The old man's eyes widened as he examined the gemstone, and he offered them a staggering 500 million naira. Without telling their parents, the friends decided to use some of the money to take a trip to the city. They had always dreamed of seeing the bright lights and bustling streets of the urban jungle, and now they had the means to make it happen. As they explored the city, they were awestruck by the towering skyscrapers, the honking cars, and the endless stream of people rushing to and fro. On their second day in the city, they decided to visit the famous city mall. As they walked through the sliding glass doors, they were greeted by a blast of air-conditioned air and the sound of chatter and music. "Whoa, look at this place!" Josh exclaimed, his eyes wide with wonder. The mall was a treasure trove of shops, restaurants, and entertainment. They spent hours browsing through the stores, trying on clothes, and sampling food from the various restaurants. Maryanne was in heaven, trying on designer dresses and shoes, and admiring herself in the mirror. David, Peniel, and Josh were more interested in the electronics store, where they spent hours playing video games and testing out the latest gadgets. As the day drew to a close, they decided to cap off their shopping spree with a visit to the mall's famous ice cream parlor. They indulged in sundaes, milkshakes, and ice cream cones, savoring the sweet treats as they sat on the parlor's outdoor patio. As they licked their ice cream cones, Maryanne turned to the others with a mischievous grin. "You know, we should do this more often." David raised an eyebrow. "You mean, sneak off to the city without our parents' permission?" Maryanne nodded. "Exactly. We are old enough to take care of ourselves. We don't need our parents' permission to have fun." Peniel and Josh exchanged a look, and then nodded in agreement. "Yeah, let's do it," Peniel said, a sly grin spreading across his face. As they finished their ice cream and left the parlor, Maryanne felt a thrill of excitement. She knew that they would have many more adventures together, and she couldn't wait to see what the future held. But little did they know, their actions would soon catch up with them, and their friendship would be put to the test. As they returned to the village, they were met with a mixture of excitement and suspicion. The villagers were abuzz with rumors of their trip to the city, and many were curious about the sudden influx of wealth. But Maryanne and her friends were tight-lipped about their adventure, and they quickly settled back into their routine. And as they settled back into their routine, Maryanne began to notice a change in Peniel's behavior. He was more withdrawn, more sullen, and more prone to outbursts of anger. "Peniel, what's wrong?" Maryanne asked one day, as they walked through the village. Peniel shrugged. "Nothing." But amidst all the excitement, tensions began to rise. Peniel had always had a secret crush on Maryanne, but she had never returned his feelings. Instead, she had grown closer to David, who had always been the voice of reason in their group. Peniel's jealousy simmered just below the surface, waiting to boil over. And when they returned to the village, he began to plot a bad plan. The friends had kept the majority of the money in a deserted hut on the outskirts of the village, a place they had always used as a hideout. But one day, when David went to retrieve some of the cash, he found Peniel already there. "What are you doing here, Peniel?" David asked, his instincts on high alert. "I'm just here to take what's mine," Peniel sneered, his eyes glinting with malice. The two friends began to argue, their voices rising as they dragged the bag of money back and forth. In the heat of the moment, Peniel pushed David, who stumbled backward and hit his head on a stone. As David lay bleeding, Peniel panicked. He grabbed the money and ran, determined to escape with Maryanne by his side. But when he found Maryanne, she was horrified by his actions. "What have you done, Peniel?" she demanded, her voice trembling with rage. Peniel tried to convince her to run away with him, but Maryanne was having none of it. She slapped him hard across the face and ran back to the hut, where she found David struggling to sit up. Without hesitation, Maryanne ran to the village for help. The village healer did his best to treat David's wound, but it soon became clear that he needed more advanced medical care. And so, they made the difficult decision to take David to the city, a journey that would take several hours by car. As they traveled, Peniel's anger and resentment simmered, waiting to boil over. It took months for David to recover from his injuries, and during that time, Peniel's behavior became increasingly erratic. He would lash out at Maryanne and Josh, blaming them for his own mistakes. Finally, when David was well enough, he and Josh decided to confront Peniel. They knew it wouldn't be easy, but they couldn't let Peniel's behavior continue to tear their group apart. The confrontation ended in a fierce fight, with the three friends clashing in a flurry of punches and kicks. But in the heat of the moment, Maryanne slipped away, unnoticed by the others. She ran to the deserted hut, where she had left the bag of money. As she looked at the bag, Maryanne felt a wave of emotions wash over her. She was tired of the fighting, tired of the greed and the anger that had consumed their group. She knew that the money was the root of all their problems, and she decided to take drastic action. With a fierce determination, Maryanne grabbed the bag and ran to the nearby fire pit. She had seen someone cooking there earlier, and she knew that the flames were still burning strong. Without hesitation, Maryanne dumped the entire bag of money into the fire. The flames engulfed the cash, burning it to ashes in a matter of seconds. As she watched the money burn, Maryanne felt a sense of peace wash over her. She knew that she had made the right decision, that she had taken a stand against the greed and corruption that had threatened to destroy their friendship. But as she turned to walk away, Maryanne saw the others running towards her. David, Josh, and Peniel were all shouting, their faces contorted with anger and shock. "What have you done, Maryanne?" David demanded, his voice trembling with rage. "I freed us," Maryanne replied, her voice calm and steady. "I freed us from the greed and the anger that was consuming us." As the others stared at her in shock, they realized she was the strong one among them. She had chosen to prioritize their friendship, to prioritize their integrity and their values. And as they stood there, watching the ashes of the money blow away in the wind, Maryanne knew that she had made the right decision. She had chosen to take a stand, to fight for what was truly important. As they walked back to the village, the tension between them was palpable. But Maryanne knew that it was a tension that would eventually dissipate, that would eventually give way to a deeper understanding and a stronger friendship. And as they emerged from the woods, Maryanne saw the village spread out before them. She saw the thatched roofs, the cooking fires, and the people they had grown up with. She knew that they still had a long way to go, that they still had to confront the consequences of their actions. But she also knew that they would face those consequences together, as friends. As they walked into the village, Maryanne felt a sense of hope rising up inside her. She looked at them and said, "Don't worry, our dreams are valid and they would come through. We just have to work for it." The boys all nodded without looking at her. She knew that they would rebuild, that they would recover from the damage that had been done. And as they disappeared into the crowd, Maryanne smiled. She knew that their friendship was strong enough to overcome anything, that it was strong enough to overcome even the darkest of challenges.